Hello, my name is Lewis and welcome to day 11 of Decktober. Today we're looking at a $45 budget Ludevic Necrogenius deck. Whenever Ludevic ETBs or attacks, you mill a card, and you may pay to exile X creature cards from your graveyard and transform Ludevic to Olag. Olag ETBs and becomes a copy of exiled creature that is also a 4/4 zombie with +1/+1 counters on, equal to number of creatures exiled with it. This deck is all about milling our deck to the max, getting in those dangerous creatures we can exile from our graveyard, and then swing in with Olag via combat damage or infect for the win. Now, let's get straight into the budget deck tech. As always, we're starting off with the ramp, and first in this budget brew is Arcane Signet to tap for an island or swamp, and Commander Sphere to do exactly the same, but also have that additional card draw option. There is Dimir Signet to pay, tap and add blue-black, and Songs of the Damned to add a swamp to your mana pool for each creature in your graveyard. We've got some rampy milling creature hybrids in Deranged Assistant to mill a card and add a mana, and Millikin to again mill a card and add a mana. And finally, we have Sol Ring, because Sol Ring. Before we take a trip to Mill City, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe for all things MTG. It's completely free to do, and it helps our channel grow and grow as we head towards 2,000 subscribers. Now we're going to be looking at all the millions of ways to mill. First up, we've got Corpse Connoisseur, the ETBs, and you may search your library for a creature card and put it into your graveyard. And Gravebreaker Lamia, the ETBs, you search your library for a card and put it into your graveyard. We have Auric Lawmage that you can tap to search your library for a card and put it straight into your graveyard, and Vile Entomber that again, ETBs, you search your library for a card and you put that card straight into your graveyard. Having these cards in this deck are so key, as we want some targeted mill to get those key cogs into our graveyard so we can exile them with Ludevic and start doing some deadly damage to our opponents. There is Unmarked Grave to search your library for a non-legendary card and put it into your graveyard, and Final Parting to search your library for 2 cards, putting 1 in your hand and 1 in the graveyard. For some huge mill, we have Mirror Mad Phantasm. You shuffle this card into your library and draw cards until you redraw Mirror Mad Phantasm, putting all of the cards revealed this way straight into the graveyard. And Dream Eater to surveil 4 and return a non-land permanent an opponent controls to its owner's hand. For more surveil action, we have Night Veil Sprite, that when attacks you surveil 1, and Sinister Starfish that you can tap to surveil 1. And we've also added in a Master of Death that ETBs and you surveil 2, with the added bonus that if it's in your graveyard at the beginning of your upkeep, you may pay 1 life and return it to your hand. And there is Price of Fame to have as an additional removal option with a cheaper casting cost if it targets a legendary creature. We have Atris Oracle of Half-Truths, that when ETBs, target opponent looks at the top 3 of your library, separating it into a face down and face up pile, putting 1 pile in your hand and the other into your graveyard. And there is the almost matching card, Fact or Fiction, to do exactly the same, but with 5 cards instead of 3. There is Notion Rain to surveil 2, draw 2 and deal 2 damage to you, and Frantic Search to draw 2, discard 2 and untap up to 3 lands. For some big millers, we have Incarnation Technique to mill 5 and return a creature from the graveyard to the battlefield, and King Nafi's Betrayal to mill 4 and start exiling creatures and planeswalkers from graveyards. We've got Dreadhound to ETB, mill 3 and deal 1 damage whenever a creature dies or is put into a graveyard from a library, and Forbidden Alchemy to look at the top 4 cards of your library, putting 1 in your hand and the rest in your graveyard, with the devilishly delightful flashback option. There is Maya Triton that ETBs, mills 2 and gains you 2 life, an Air Bloom Mirror to pay, discard a card and have that option to draw a card and mill a card. Finally, we have Dimir Charm to look at the top 3 cards of your library, putting 1 on the top and then the others in the graveyard, with that added usage of having a sorcery counterspell or creature removal, and Whispering Madness to discard your entire hand and then draw a new one, with that added rarely seen Cypher mechanic. As we've said already, the entire point of this self-mill deck is to get a select dozen or so cards in there so Ludevic can transform into a copy of that chosen milled creature. So we've milled our deck, now let's look at the creatures that are in there. We're starting off filthy with Blighted Agent, an unblockable infect creature, and Vector Asp, another creature you can pay a black to give infect until end of turn. Remember, these will already be 4/4s at minimum, with the chance to give +1/+1 counters when Olag hits. This could be a 1 or 2 hit infect KO. There is Monster Stormtide Leviathan, an 8/8 with Island Walk that says creatures without flying or Island Walk can't attack, another huge hitter that will potentially chop down your opponent's striking power and give you a clear route to their life total. And Consuming Aberration, whose power and toughness are equal to the number of creatures in all opponents' graveyards, and whenever you cast a spell, opponents mill until they get a land, putting all milled cards that way into their graveyard, potentially boosting Consuming Aberration even more. We've got Rexiel the Risen Deep with Island Walk, Swamp Walk, and when it deals combat damage to a player, you can cast target instant or sorcery from that player's graveyard without paying its mana cost. And for more theft, we have Rakshasa Tabasa, that when attacks, you put target creature from defending player's graveyard onto the field under your control. There is Avatar of Woe with Fear, and you can tap to destroy target creature, and Sir Conrad the Grim for some constant pinging action whenever creatures die, hit the graveyard from anywhere, or leave the graveyard, with yet another added milling option. There is Zombie Master that says all zombies have Swamp Walk and Regenerate, perfect as our newly transformed Olag is a zombie, so if it bites the dust and we've got the mana, we're bringing it straight back. Finally, there is Underworld Sentinel that when attacks, you exile target creature from your graveyard, and when it dies, you put all cards exiled back onto the battlefield. Before we get onto the lands, we're looking at the removal, recursion, and the best of the rest in this budget deck. First up is Thief of Sanity, that when it deals combat damage, you look at the top 3 cards of that player's library, exile one, and you may play cast exile card and spend mana of any colour to do so. Yep, even more villainous thievery in this deck. And we've got Wonder, which says if it's in a graveyard and you control an island, all creatures you control have flying. This is the perfect paired card for our beloved Stormtide Leviathan. For loads of card draw options, we have Arcanist the Omnipotent to tap and draw 3 cards, and Looter Il-Kor that when deals damage to an opponent, draw a card and discard a card. There is Merfolk Looter to tap and draw a card and discard a card, and Notion Thief that says if an opponent would draw a card except the first card on their draw step, they skip that draw and you draw a card instead. We've got Overwhelmed Archivist to draw a card and discard a card when hitting the field, and Shadowfield Infiltrator that again when deals combat damage, you draw a card. The cards here that allow us to draw a card and discard are double bonus, so we're not only drawing through our deck, but also getting a chance to put those big hitters into the graveyard. There is Undead Augur, this is whenever it or another zombie you control dies, draw a card and lose a life, and Wolf Infiltrator, that when it gets through some combat damage, you draw a card and discard a card. You also have the added chance to pay 2 when you discard a creature card and create a 3/2 Eldrazi Horror. There is Mask of Riddles to give equipped creature fear, and when it deals damage to a player, you draw a card, an Obsessive Stitcher to tap to draw a card, discard a card, then you may pay to sack it and get some good old creature recursion. We've got Stitch Together to return target creature to your hand, but if you hit that threshold, then the creature goes straight into play. And Victimize to choose 2 creature cards in your graveyard, sacrifice a creature, and get both of those creatures onto the battlefield tapped. We've got Malevolent Hermit as a hold-up counterspell option, and Necromantic Selection to destroy all creatures and return a creature card put into a graveyard this way back into play. There are some removal options in Feed the Swarm to destroy target creature or enchantment an opponent controls, and you lose life equals that permanent's mana value, and Raven Form to exile target artifact or creature that you can foretell, and its controller creates a nice little 1/1 token. There is Lazav the Multifarious that ETVs and you surveil 1. You can also have him as an extra option similar to Ludevic to become a copy of target creature in your graveyard, with Body Double again having that exact ETB effect. Finally, we have Night Howler, an enchantment creature that can give it an enchanted creature +X/+X, where X is the number of creature cards in all graveyards. For the last section in this budget brew, we're looking at all of the lands, and in this deck there are 16 Island and 16 Swamp. We have Command Tower and Exotic Orchard to help fix your mana options, and there's even more Commander staples in Evolving Worlds and Terramorphic Expanse to sack and fetch out a basic land tapped. We've added in Temple of Deceit that ETB's tapped and you get to scry 1, and Port of Carfell to again ETB tapped, but has that option to sack it and you mill 4 and return a creature card from the graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Ludevic is a great Dimir commander option, and one that I think has flown under the radar for how effective and evil it could be. Make sure to check out Decktober Day 12 tomorrow, where we'll be looking at a big extinct but classic commander budget brew. There we have it, that is the Ludevic $45 budget deck tech. Make sure to smash that like button and subscribe for all things MTG. Check out our link tree in the description below for all of our social media and affiliate links. But for now though, I am all tapped out. So I'll see you in the next video.